Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we are talking about podcasting. My name is Patrick. I am a husband, I'm a dad, and along with being a full-time worship pastor at a church in New York City, I also run my own tech business. Let's do it. I had a friend recently reach out to me and say, Patrick, do you have a video on how to start your own podcast? And I do now. Amanda, this video is for you. If you're thinking of starting your own podcast, you will soon realize there are millions of podcasts out there. So you will start as a small fish in a big pond. And recording your podcast has never been easier. I'm going to talk about some equipment that you can use to do that today. However, when it comes to distributing your podcast, that has always been an area that was really tough to understand unless you did some digging. But now, distributing your podcast has never been easier with services like Anchor. And Anchor is absolutely free, and that's where I want to start today. I want to start with your Anchor account. If you're looking to start a podcast, there are billions of services you can use, and some of them are super top tier. Some of them are a really low bar. You can try to do everything yourself. You can let a company do things for you. But today I want to talk about one of the easiest ways to get into podcasting, and that's through Anchor. So for that, we're going to hop over to my computer here. This is the Anchor website, anchor.fm. And if I want to get started, well, I click this big button here that says Get Started. So I'm going to create my account, Patrick. And then I'm going to put in my email, which I'm not going to share with you at all. Now, once I set up my account using my name and my email address and creating a password, it takes me right to this page, Welcome to Anchor. Here's what happens next. And it walks you through making your first episode, setting up your podcast, and then finally distributing your podcast, and then monetization. Now, monetization means a lot of people listen to your podcast, you get paid. When your podcast or your YouTube channel get popular, you will have brands reaching out to you. But one special thing that Anchor does is it finds brands for you that want to promote with your podcast that you can just then partner with right through Anchor. It takes all the searching and all the waiting out of it for you and then gets you monetized quicker. But before we get there, let's go ahead and make our first episode. So I'm going to click on Let's Do It. Now, right here inside of Anchor, I can record my episode. That means if I have a microphone, I have two microphones here that I'm going to talk about quickly, or even if I'm just using the Voice Memos app on my iPhone, my iPad, my Mac, my PC, I can just start adding audio to Anchor right away. I can hit publish, and essentially, I've created a podcast. It's never been easier. So I'm going to hit record here, and it's going to say, am I allowed to use your microphone? Sure. Now, I want to talk about microphones really quickly. So far, everything we've done has been absolutely free, okay? I'm using my Mac or my PC. I'm signing into anchor.fm. I'm creating a free account to start podcasting. If you're going to create a podcast, though, you do want to purchase an external mic. And my two favorites are this Rode NT USB Mini, which plugs in right through USB-C. It has a headphone jack to monitor your audio as well. I do also want to mention that this Rode NT USB Mini connects to a Rode application on your computer that can connect up to 4 different Rode NT USB Minis to record a podcast via that USB-C cable. If you have a couple of different guests or it's just you and one other person talking, it makes things really easy. And then from that app, you can actually publish right to Anchor and other places, but we're not going to get into that today. I actually have another video that you can watch about that app that you can click on in the description. My other favorite microphone for recording voiceovers, recording podcasts, or just recording in general is this Samson Q2U. Now, the reason why I like the Samson is, again, it connects right through USB, right to your computer. It also has an XLR jack. So this is just like every other microphone. Every microphone cable that you've seen plug into a microphone plugs into this mic as well. So you can plug this into an audio console, you can plug this into an audio interface, or you can just plug it right into your computer via USB, and it sounds great. It's also just got an on-off switch, which is great because I use this for a lot of Zoom meetings, and I can just click it off instead of having to fumble around to find that mute button. Great microphone. I have a comparison between these two microphones, a video of that you can click on in the description. Feel free to tell me which one is your favorite. But back to Anchor. When we are creating audio, you're not going to want to use the microphone built into your computer. It's going to sound like garbage. It's going to sound like garbage. Garbage. You you want to go out there and spend either $99 for a Rode NT USB Mini, or about $60 for this Samson Q2U, or whatever your budget is to find a great external microphone to capture your voice. Almost any microphone is going to sound better than the one built into your computer. But long story short, when I click Start Recording Now, some audio is recorded into Anchor, and I can publish that audio as an episode. I also have the ability to click and drag any audio that I've pre-recorded into Anchor. You can see that here. Click to upload or drag files here, and it lets you know what audio and video file types are supported. You also have the ability to add music from Spotify. Once you start recording episodes, you'll see this messages button. People can actually leave kind of like voicemails on your podcast as comments. And you also see transitions here, where you can add in like some different transitions to your podcast that make cutting between different scenes in your podcast easier. So I want to add some audio to my episode. And again, I want to record that audio really, really well. I want it to sound professional. I want it to sound nice. I want it to be pleasing to people's ears. A podcast, unless you're doing a video podcast, the audio needs to be crispy, because if it's not, that's the whole medium you're using to communicate to people. And if your audio doesn't sound good, you will find people clicking away from your podcast very, very fast, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hide Anchor for a second, and I'm going to open up GarageBand, because this is a free application that comes built into your Mac. Now again, I'm an Apple user. I worked at Apple for a long time, forgive me, but here we are in GarageBand, and I can start a new project, I can learn to play, all sorts of things. I'm going to go to the project template and select Voice. What this does here is puts a few different instruments or settings for whatever microphone you want to use that are going to make your voice sound really cool, really creepy, all sorts of things. It's just a starter template for recording your voice. Now, right here, it's asking me a question about what microphone I want to use. I want to use my Samson Q2U. So the way I do that is I go into GarageBand's preferences. Every single application has preferences. And I go to the Audio MIDI tab, and right there it says Input Device, Samson Q2U. I see some other things listed there that I could use as well, but I am going to use the Samson Q2U. Here we go. So as you can see, there's that little green line reading my voice. And if I get really close and I get too loud, it's a little too loud, but I don't plan on getting that loud. I'm gonna talk like right about this volume here. So what I do is I just go ahead and press record, and I am recording my first audio region for my podcast. Welcome to Patrick's Podcast. We are so glad you're here. Today, we are talking about podcasting on my podcast and how to podcast better via this podcast. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned. Right, so I've recorded my first audio region for my podcast. If I go back to the beginning of that region and push play, and I am recording my first audio region for my podcast. Isn't that great? So I've got my first little snippet of a podcast here, an episode that's about 10 seconds long of just me saying hi. So what I want to do is, and I don't want to get too much into the editing of this audio, but you can do that. Right down here you can see all sorts of controls, you see EQ. If you feel comfortable playing around and making some of those changes, go for it. But if you're a beginning podcaster and you don't know a lot about editing or recording audio, I'm telling you, these GarageBand settings with an okay microphone are going to be pleasing to the ear. So just stick with those for now. So I'm ready to take this podcast and send it to the world. So I go to GarageBand Share menu and I say Export Song to Disk. And what that does is allow me to save this audio file. I'm going to save it to my desktop, and I'm going to call it My Best Podcast Yet, right? Because I have confidence in me. Sound of Music.
They'll have to agree I have confidence in me.
So it takes that audio file and it exports it to my desktop. Again, we could have gotten way more detailed with that process, but today we're just talking about getting started with a podcast. I'm gonna hide GarageBand, and right here on my desktop, I see an audio file called My Best Podcast Yet. Hey, honey. Yeah. Oh, cool. That is awesome. Love you, bye. So my audio's been exported to my desktop, and I'm ready to hear it. And I am recording my first audio region for my podcast. Welcome to Patrick's. And I'm happy with the way that sounds. So now I want to take that and I want to send it to Anchor as my first episode. Well, let's open Anchor back up. And here I go. So it says create your first episode. We already talked about the record tab, which we're not using. We've already recorded. We already talked about all these other tabs, but right here it says click to upload or drag files here. So I'm gonna take this audio file and just drag it right onto the drag audios? I'm gonna take this audio file and drag it right onto the drag audio here section. And it starts uploading that audio. And since it's such a small audio file, it's not gonna take long at all. It says, my best podcast yet, and I have all sorts of customizations I can make here. For instance, if I move over this little musical note, it says add background music. You might want to add background music to your podcast. If I see this plus sign here, I can add more to this episode. So maybe you recorded an audio file and then you said, oh my gosh, I forgot to, there's this edit I need to make to the podcast, or this retraction or something. At the end of it, you can just hit that plus sign and say, actually I said this, but I meant this. You also see these 3 lines here, which if I click, it says you can download this audio file and you can delete it permanently. So not only is Anchor taking your audio file, it's storing it, allowing you to add to it, allowing you to edit it. Amazing. But I'm gonna go ahead and click on this button here that says Save Episode. So episode options. What do you want to call this episode? Episode 1, episode description, first podcast ever, right? Publish date. Now the reason why it's not just taking today's date is sometimes you record podcast episodes in bulk and you want to publish them on specific dates. You know, every single Monday at 8 a.m. you want a new episode to come out. So you can select what date you want these podcast episodes to be published. I'm just gonna select now. For now. Down here you will see upload new episode art. I would suggest using a service like canva.com, which I'm going to make a video about later. Free service that allows you to create logos and social media posts and all sorts of things. It's really great. And then you can select what season. So I'm going to say season 1, episode 1. Is this a full episode, a trailer, a bonus episode? Is it clean or is it explicit? So all of that feels good to me, and I'm going to click on publish. And there it goes. So now it's taking me to the next step. Not only is my episode published, but it needs me to actually set up my entire podcast as a whole. Podcast name, Murphy's Law, because my name is Patrick Murphy. Podcast description, nope. Category, arts, language, English. And continue. Choose your cover art. I'm going to search for a photo. I'm going to select this photo, or I could upload my own. Continue. So now this is going to be the art for my entire channel or my entire podcast. Okay, good to go, good to go. Murphy's Law, that looks terrible, but we're going to stick with it anyway. Then I'm gonna click on Update Cover Art, okay? So once my podcast is uploaded, it's going to say ready to distribute your podcast. If you'd like, we can automatically send this podcast everywhere. Now I'm going to be honest with you, this does take some tender loving care. You need to monitor this. Anchor isn't perfect, and sometimes it takes quite a while to send to different services. For instance, I'm still working on getting my podcast into the Apple Podcast app, but it's in Spotify right away, which was amazing. But you want to monitor this, but Anchor does distribute your podcast for you. Yes, distribute my podcast. If you want to click, I'll do this myself. It is going to be, like it says here, an advanced process. So we're just going to click yes, distribute my podcast. Okay, thanks. And then finally it says, your episode is published. Time to grow your audience. Do you want to share this to Facebook, Twitter? Do you want to copy the link? Do you want to make it a blog post? All sorts of options here, and you definitely want to use some of these. Share your podcast. Get your voice out there, let people know it's available. It's gonna help you in the long run. But I'm just gonna click on, no. I'm just gonna say copy link, copied, and then click the X here. So episode 1 has been published. My podcast exists. And what I want to do really quickly is take you over to a podcast that I had a while back that's been running for a while to show you what it looks like when your podcast is a little bit more seasoned. Because if I click back onto our episode 1 that we just published, if I go to my dashboard, you can see I don't have any listens, I don't have almost anything. As you can see here, if I click on that money tab, you'll see you have to like unlock the option to gain sponsorships, and you have to set up subscriptions or listener support. And these are some things I've done on a podcast that I've had for quite some time that I would love to show you so you can see what that kind of looks like down the line. So this is a podcast I had that's all about worship because I'm a worship pastor at a church that's called Undignified. You can see here I've got a really, killer description. Down here I've got all-time 28 plays. This is something I started recording a long time ago, and I kind of just bailed on because I liked doing YouTube a lot more. I have a total estimated audience of 4 and 1 unique listener, and I have earned 21 cents. Applause.
Cash money, I'm gonna make it rain.
So you can see here that I've got some analytics. This kind of fell off the wagon, and I really stopped giving it any attention. So you can see that it trends down pretty hard. You can see it shows you your top episodes, your listeners, where they're from. Most of them are from Spotify. You can see age and gender and for some other demographics or stats. And then if I go over here to episodes, you can see my episodes listed out here, how long they are, how many plays there were. I can click these 3 little lines and view the details, copy a public link to an episode, download the episode, and then in my money tab, you can see total earned all time, 21 cents. You can also see my sponsorships. I think it's once you have 50 plays, you can start adding sponsorships into your episodes. And the first one is always Anchor. And it gives you a script to read, and it says press record. You just pull your mic right in. Once again, you do this right inside of the Anchor app, and you record a voiceover for a commercial for Anchor. And then if your podcast picks up and people are clicking on your podcast, you begin to make money. So other companies will come in and say, well, I want to be a sponsor for that podcast as well. You'll get a script, you'll record that spot, and you'll just plug it right into your podcast, and you've gained sponsorships and you're making a little money on the side. You can see subscriptions here, get paid for your podcast by offering monthly subscriptions. You can see listener support, accept monthly recurring donations directly from your listeners. There's all sorts of tips here to make money with your podcast. So this is our How to Start a Podcast in 2021 video. And remember, every single thing we did today was absolutely free. The only thing I suggested was buying an external microphone. And by the way, if you're also recording video for your podcast, which many people do, and we can get into that in another video, where if you're recording the audio for your podcast, you might as well just throw your phone up and record video as well and make it a YouTube channel. Ding! Doesn't this just look cool? It just looked cool to have like a microphone like this in front of you. It's just really, really nice. I love the look of it, and I love the sound of it, which is even more important when dealing with microphones. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if there's anything in particular that you'd like to hear or you'd like to talk more about, let me know in the comments, and then do all the other YouTube things. Like this video, subscribe to my channel. My name is Patrick. Thanks for coming.